It's November 13th, 2024. The line has moved. Let's talk about it. It's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, let me just say, you were getting incredible value. I believe this fight's going to change boxing. You were getting incredible value. They were giving you Mike Tyson at a plus 225, right? Plus 225. The last I checked, the smart money's starting to show up. Tyson has dropped to a plus 190. Right? A plus 190. Now, I was in a sports bar recently, and I was talking to a young guy in his mid-30s. Now, understand what it's like being older than your mid-30s. I'm looking at the guy, and I'm thinking to myself, as we're talking boxing, has this guy ever seen Mike Tyson fight? Apart from some highlights, right? How much does this 34-year-old know about the Mike Tyson of the late 80s, early 90s? Do the math, figure it out. The answer is not much. So this guy was being trendy. He was pushing an Eddie Hearn line. And he was talking to me about the undercard, right? Serrano, Katie Taylor. I like Serrano in that fight. Some other fights on the undercard, right? He claimed that he was going to get up and leave, if you could believe this, before the Tyson fight took place. That if he was watching it on Netflix, he was going to change the channel. Right, folks, understand there are two groups out there right now. There's the group that actually saw Tyson fight. Notice the gray here. Right, there's the group that actually remembers Mike Tyson. Then there's the group, and they're influencing the line right now, that has no clue. They think that watching Jake Paul fight Tyron Woodley or Nate Diaz is the same as watching Mike Tyson against Larry Holmes or Michael Spinks. Right? They're in a household where they look at a dad who's, given up since he's found mom, since he's found his woman. And they're looking at dad who maybe has a desk job, hasn't figured out where the gym is in town, has never been a professional athlete, and they're saying, that's what your mid-50s look like. Right? They have no idea that there are serious athletes out there who've been professional athletes, who keep themselves in shape, who watch their calories, who work out, who have been around, so they understand the opportunity that this fight against really a semi-professional Jake Paul provides them. So let me just make a couple of points here. I feel Tyson wins the fight. I'll be surprised if Tyson doesn't get a stoppage. What I want people to do is to not focus even on Tyson's career. What I want them to do is to focus on Tyson's fight against Hall of Famer Roy Jones. Right, folks? That's a fight within the last 5 years. Right? Roy Jones, as you might remember, himself was a heavyweight champion. He beat John Ruiz, a guy who I believe beat Evander Holyfield. So there was an article. There was an article recently in BoxingScene.com. Folks, it's still up. I want folks to look at that article. Now understand, Jones got hit hard in some matches. He gets stopped by Tarver. He gets stopped by Glenn Johnson. One of the scariest knockouts, believe it or not, I have seen watching boxing for decades is when he got stopped by Denis Lebedev. There's a moment there where you were wondering if Roy was going to open his eyes again. So Roy's been hit hard, right? Later in his career, when he was a little bit past his prime, by world-class fighters. Well, just to understand, in the Boxing Scene article, and the article is entitled, Roy Jones Jr. says Mike Tyson was the hardest puncher he ever faced. Jones is quoted here as saying, and this fight is within the last 5 years, the first time Mike hit me in the chest, it felt like a mule kicked me. When they said to do 14-ounce gloves and headgear, I said none of that was needed to protect Mike Tyson. Roy went into the fight, and he clearly thought that he would have the upper hand on Tyson. Folks, old-timers will tell you, this is a boxing truism that's existed since I first started watching boxing, that power is the last to go. Right? Understand, power is the last to go. Right? There are stories about Jack Dempsey when he was a senior citizen getting accosted by two young punks who tried to rip him off. And Jack Dempsey, of course, subduing the guys. There's another story of Billy Conn having a meal in a diner. Some young guy comes in to rob the place. This old diner gets up. He's going to fight back. You know the rest. The cops show up. Billy Conn has the guy subdued. Right, folks? Understand. I have no doubt, as I sit here, that Lennox Lewis, a puncher, still hits harder than most 20-year-olds. I have no doubt that Vladimir Klitschko, a puncher, still hits harder than most 20-year-olds. If I were some young punk and I decided, hey, I'm going to rob a senior citizen, if I saw George Foreman, I'm not making any moves. Right, folks? Power is the last to go. You have guys in the heavyweight division right now who are competitive in their 40s. Right, folks? They're still world-class fighters. So here you have Mike Tyson. He's in his mid-50s. Understand how his career ends. I know the people in the UK know this. That Danny Williams fight was a shootout. Look at the film of that fight, folks. You're going to be dazzled. It's a shootout. Mike Tyson had the upper hand, then Danny Williams had the upper hand. Folks, Danny hit hard. Danny was a professional prize fighter. Danny was a heavyweight. The Kevin McBride fight, not as much of a shootout as the Danny Williams fight, but understand, McBride's a big heavyweight. They're in there trading punches. So now we have Tyson, who has gone through a life journey. Right? He's now an entrepreneur. He's lost some weight. Don't be fooled by that. He's lost some weight. This is a guy who made his stripes against heavyweights. Right? Understand, you have a whole group of heavyweights. Joe Frazier, Rocky Marciano, right? Who, fought and did better against bigger guys. Guys bigger than them. That's what they're accustomed to fighting. You can't look at the size of the guy. You have to ask the question, who does he do well against? These two guys might look like they're the same size, Tyson and Jake Paul, right? And I'm a Jake Paul fan. I think Jake Paul's legit. He's just not this legit. They might look the same size. One of these guys lost to Tommy Fury. You know you couldn't imagine Mike Tyson ever losing to Tommy Fury. You know that, don't you? Right? One of these guys has been hit by people like Lennox Lewis. Right? That's the level of puncher Mike Tyson has been in with. There is a way to beat Mike Tyson. If you have a great jab, like Buster Douglas had, you could keep Tyson outside if you're lucky. But understand, in that fight, Douglas had to get up off the canvas, didn't he? Douglas barely beat the count, if you believe he beat the count. It's when Douglas gets up off the canvas and has survived that Douglas is able to drop Tyson on a picture perfect. It's one of the best punches I've seen. Picture perfect uppercut. You think Jake Paul's going to get that lucky? Right, the other way to beat Mike Tyson is the Hall of Fame, boxing. You can get inside on Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield way. Right, folks, you really think that Jake Paul is going to get inside on Mike Tyson and work him over? You think Tyson's going to be so frustrated that Jake Paul's head is so up on his that Tyson starts biting Jake Paul's ears? You think that's going to happen? So let's talk about what's really going to happen from a boxing standpoint. You understand that Jake Paul is going to try to beat Tyson on his back foot, don't you? Right? Because you understand. You understand, and I know I was wrong on the Holyfield-Victor Belfort fight. Right? Let me own that loss. I was wrong on that. Right? But just understand, you get that Jake Paul doesn't have the skill set to come inside on Mike Tyson. You get that Jake Paul is going to try to fight Mike Tyson on his back foot. Something Danny Williams didn't do, Kevin McBride didn't do, Lennox Lewis didn't do. I'm talking about the guys who beat Mike Tyson. Right? Understand, he's going to try to beat Tyson on his back foot. Folks, how many times has that been successful? We saw Roy Jones. The Jones fight is interesting. You need to look at that fight. Right? Jones has a clear foot speed advantage on Mike Tyson. Jones is moving around the ring. Tyson starts walking him down. Tyson has his head low. Tyson is a professional prize fighter. He's hard to find. Right? Tyson knows how to fight low. Tyson starts going to Jones's body. Jones could not keep Mike Tyson off of him. Don't be fooled by the judges in that fight. They had people like Ray Mancini judging that fight. They had celebrity judges. Revisit that fight. Mike Tyson beat Roy Jones by several rounds. Right? Let's go by the actual fight, not the scoring. So here, Tyson's going to be on his front foot. Whatever Tyson's weight is. Tyson views himself as heavyweight. Right? You know that's the case. Right? You and I know if you were fighting Smoking Joe Frazier today, you could be the same size as Joe Frazier. He's going to view you as small. You know that. Same thing with Dwight Cowie. Right? You know he's going to view you as small. Because his past involves fighting big men. Tyson's going to come in on Jake Paul. The experience isn't even close. Understand, the toughest person either guy has fought over the last 5 years is Roy Jones Jr., who Mike Tyson fought. Jake Paul hasn't fought anyone like Roy Jones. Right, so let me just say, Tyson's going to come in. He's going to be on his front foot. Let's also talk about a dodgy topic here. Reflexes. Right, I want people to take a step back here and think of LeBron James. Now understand, LeBron's doing stuff most 40-year-olds haven't come close to doing. Right? I'm a Jordan guy. At 40, I'd take LeBron over Jordan. Right? I'd take Jordan over LeBron in terms of who's the better player. Right? Career-wise. But understand, by the time Jordan got to LeBron's age, he wasn't close to where LeBron is today. Now, what makes LeBron LeBron? Let's get controversial here. Right? A Jordan is quick twitch. He's more read and react. Jordan's the guy who leaves his feet, sees you move, then he switches the ball to the other hand in midair, and then gets the layup. Right? Understand, LeBron's different. LeBron is more Jim Brown. Right? He's not quick twitch in midair acrobatics. He's more gets a step on you. Good luck catching up to him. He's bigger than you. He's faster than you. He'll finish the dunk. Now, Mike Tyson is a lead, right? He can lead or counter. But against a Jake Paul, he doesn't have to worry about countering. Right? He's a lead. He's the one setting the pace. He's not trying to read and react. This isn't Jordan in midair realizing, oh, this brother has jumped with me. Let me switch hands and let me dip this under him. That's not MJ. That's not MT. Right? Tyson is going to come in and he's going to be moving. He's going to be fighting small. He has a preset bob and weave pattern. Then he's going to come in throwing hooks. You understand that. Because he's not waiting on Jake Paul, his age isn't going to matter. Right? His game's a power game. He's going to come in, he's going to have Jake Paul guessing based on how he's bobbing and weaving. But he's not really relying on his perception of what Jake Paul is doing. He's more of a LeBron James than a Michael Jordan. Right? So just understand, nothing's going to stop Mike Tyson from coming in and throwing big punches. When a guy who's been stopped by Tarver, Johnson, and Lebedev, right, they had to give Roy Jones smelling salts on the canvas when he was knocked out by Lebedev, tells you that the hardest guy, the hardest puncher he's faced, and boxers remember who that is, right? We know Shannon Briggs is the hardest puncher Lennox Lewis has faced. Roy Jones is telling you in this article that the hardest puncher he's faced is Mike Tyson. And when you read the fine print on this upcoming fight, and you realize that it's 2-minute rounds, you understand that Tyson should be the favorite, not the underdog. Tyson only has to be right once. Now, Jake Paul does have what I consider to be an A-level straight right hand. Tyson has to look out for that straight A-level right hand. But understand, Tyson's going to be coming in low. These guys might look around the same size. Jake Paul doesn't have that option. I'll agree. Tyson isn't the best on his back foot. Do you think Jake Paul is going to get him on his back foot? So, let me just say this. Two boxers who are among the best analysts of the sport in my eyes believe Jake Paul beats him. Right? One of them is George Foreman. Foreman's been diplomatic, but Foreman quietly believes Jake Paul beats him. Understand, Foreman has experience at fighting past 40 on a world-class level. Right? The other guy, and this has given me pause. I'm just giving you the opinions that are out there. The other guy who feels that Jake Paul beats him is Evander Holyfield, who beat Mike Tyson twice. Right? But understand, you need to read the Evander interviews. Evander feels that if Jake Paul can stay if Jake Paul can stay close to Mike Tyson, he can beat him. Right? Folks, that's easy for Evander Holyfield to say. Right? You know, I remember watching a Marvis Frazier fight where Joe Frazier was in his corner and Dad told son, just go in there and mix it up with him. Right? Sometimes these greats don't understand that the rest of us are mortals. Right, folks? If Jake Paul's path to victory involves staying close to Mike Tyson, being in the pocket with Mike Tyson, trying to channel Errol Spence against Mike Tyson, he's going to find out that many men have tried and many men have failed, and that he's not the big, rough, heavyweight puncher that guys like Danny Williams were. Right? So I'll just say this. The line's starting to drop. I believe the group that actually has seen Mike Tyson fight, that have figured out that Tyson's taking this fight seriously, that this fight is a moment in time. This could open the door. I'm telling you, there are a lot of boxers out there, older boxers, who see flaws in some current boxers and who would love the opportunity in these celebrity fights to take on a Jake Paul. Roy Jones has wanted to take on Jake Paul. Right? Oscar in the past has talked about Canelo, and you get the feeling Oscar would love to fight Canelo, but right now, politically, it's not possible because of that Evander Holyfield-Victor Belfort fight. Right? I get the feeling if Tyson destroys Jake Paul, the floodgates are going to open. So you have Lennox Lewis. Lewis stopped Tyson. Lewis was a puncher. Right? Lewis quietly feels that Mike Tyson has too much power for Jake Paul. Right? People, of course, now are going to the camps of the two fighters. And folks, it's a light switch. The people show up at the Mike Tyson camp. They understand it's going to go one of two ways. Either this is an old guy deluding himself. Perhaps it's an old guy looking for a payday. Or it's an old guy who knows this is not only a payday, this is a huge opportunity in a fight Tyson should win. Right, folks? The hand speed's still there because understand, Tyson's a lead. It's harder to have hand speed if you're a counterpuncher, right? Terrence Crawford is looking at you. He's reacting to the punches you throw. Just imagine how much faster Crawford would be if Crawford has power, hand speed, and he knows he's the leader. You have to follow him. Right? Tyson's going to come in. He's going to be throwing combinations. He's not going to be waiting on Jake Paul. The hand speed is still going to be there. Tyson's ability to fight low is still going to be there. Right, folks? Jake Paul is going to go through 3 rounds of hell. Who knows if he's even going to be standing at the start of the 4th round. Let me point out, too, that let's say he makes it through the 3 rounds of hell. How diminished is he? Right? Understand, the oddity part of this fight's going to be the first 3 rounds. Jake Paul thinks this is going to be a fight where the opponent is cautious and Jake gets the opportunity to aim and plant that straight right hand. Right? The one that knocked out Ben Askren. Folks, when you're fighting a Mike Tyson, Tyson's moving his head. Haven't we seen Mike moving his head like this? Tyson's moving his head and he's coming in. Right, folks? It's hard. This is the difference between being at a batting range where the pitching machine is shooting the ball out at the same angle and facing an actual pitcher who has an odd release point. You're facing Clayton Kershaw and you're like, wow, I can't tell when he's going to throw the ball. He has a hitch in his windup. Or a pitcher who can change the release point. You're guessing the release point. Then you realize, wow, this isn't the same as hitting off a machine. Right? Jake Paul's a businessman. I believe he understands he's not ready for this level of heavyweight, even in his mid to late 50s. Understand, too, if Tyson wins this match based on these rules, 2-minute rounds, not 3-minute rounds, the market's going to come to him. We're in a big, clunky heavyweight era. Right, folks? Tyson cleaned ship on an earlier big, clunky heavyweight era. What happens if Mike Tyson then says, hey, Deontay Wilder, you've been talking a lot of smack about me. You feel you're one of the all-time greats. I have a punch too. You're not the only one with a big punch. Let's have at it. Right? Folks, the commission could make it 2-minute rounds. Doesn't that somewhat equalize the field? Doesn't that take away some of the stamina advantage that a young guy might have? So forgive me. I'm the opposite of Eddie Hearn. Look, this is a loaded fight card. But if there's one fight I want to see, it's not the Katie Taylor fight. It's not the Mario Barrios fight. Right? I'm good. If I show up and I say, hey, babe, where are they in the show? And they say, that Mike Tyson fight's still ahead. I'm good. I'm like, okay, good. This situation's worth every penny. Right? The fight I want to see is the Tyson fight. If Jake Paul shows he's a bad man, if Jake Paul suddenly looks better than he did against Tommy Fury, if Jake Paul actually stops someone we know has risen to the heights of the heavyweight championship, great. I'll say to the Jake Paul crowd, hey man, here's the beer. You earned this. But if, as I suspect, boxing's a craft, that there's far more to Mike Tyson than meets the eye, that he still, and don't take my word for it, take Roy Jones's word, he still hits like a mule. A mule. If Tyson still has a punch and has a know-how on how to deliver it that a KG vet would have, if Tyson understands that if Jake Paul covers up his head, there's still going to be a body there to hit. And if the crowd starts to realize during the fight that Jake Paul isn't quite the caliber of Hall of Famer Roy Jones, and if Tyson actually wins the first few rounds, you can imagine how the script is going to flip. Suddenly what people thought was a carnival side act is actually going to be a real fight. And you're going to start to think to yourself by the 5th round, is Tyson going to pull this off? How many rounds did he go with Roy Jones? Folks, the answer is 8. Right? The answer is 8. We're questioning Mike Tyson's ability to go the distance here. Right? That's how the fight's priced. Tyson, even at a plus 190, is being given less than a 40% chance of winning this fight. Right? Against Jake Paul, who hasn't exactly gone 12 rounds against world-class competition, has he? Has Jake Paul gone 12 rounds? I like Tyson in this fight. I think Tyson gets a stoppage. I would not be surprised if Jake Paul gets hit so hard. And I know Jake Paul has, real people in his corner. Right? He's had real fighters helping him out. I understand that. But I would not be surprised if Jake Paul gets hit so hard that he just decides not to come out for a round. Right, folks? Didn't Sonny Liston do that against Ali? Didn't Oscar De La Hoya do that against Manny Pacquiao? Right? There's some nights where a fighter shows up and realizes, I'm not ready for this. This guy's either too fast, too elusive, or hits too hard. Right? No one's going to fault Jake Paul if Tyson starts to unload. Let me just say, too, let's remember the Mike Tyson-Frank Bruno fight. It could easily be the Mike Tyson-Brian Nielsen fight. The Mike Tyson-Marvis Frazier fight. Tyson gets inside and never leaves. Right? You have to have something to get Mike Tyson off of you. Even Lennox Lewis resorted to pushing Tyson off of him. Right, folks? If Mike Tyson gets inside on Jake Paul, what does Jake have to work with? I look forward to your answers in the comment section of this YouTube video. Understand, half the crowd, if you're sitting down with a 34, 35-year-old, and they're telling you that this fight is an embarrassment, and you're looking at the guy and you realize the guy has no idea that Mike Tyson fought Roy Jones within the last 5 years. The guy has no idea that Mike Tyson is in spectacular shape. The guy has no idea that Mike Tyson came up and was trained by the same people who backed heavyweight champion Floyd Patterson. Right? Tyson came up through the Cus D'Amato system. Right? Tyson was a prodigy. Tyson received excellent early instructions. Teddy Atlas, for a time, was part of Team Mike Tyson. Right? You don't have to tell Tyson that he needs to fight low, he needs to be sudden, he needs to move his head. And understand, just like Joe Frazier's not reading you when he bobbed and weaved, neither is Mike Tyson. This is a LeBron James situation. I think Tyson takes this. I think the plus 190 is a gift. I think old-timers understand this could be a heist where you're getting outsized odds because the world doesn't really know Tyson. Right? They know he's a great from the past, but he might as well be Sonny Liston. Right? They feel, oh, he's older, he's a different time. Right? Intuitively, people think, wow, I see a 6'6", 6'5", Anthony Joshua. I look at how big a Daniel Dubois is. The game has passed by. Younger guys. Right? How many generations are going to make that mistake? Understand, you had a time where a light heavyweight champion fought Rocky Marciano. And, of course, Archie Moore drops Marciano. Right? Marciano gets off the canvas and beats Archie Moore. But understand, the old mongoose, as he was called, still had power, still had suddenness. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. It's a little bit shocking that we can have a cruiserweight up at heavyweight beating the likes of Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. And people are looking at Mike Tyson and they're thinking, oh, he's too small, right? I'm just telling you that Usyk on his best day probably doesn't have the punching power that Mike Tyson still has. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours. By the way, I'm an Usyk fan. I thought Usyk would do well at heavyweight. Right, I'm just telling you, recognize a puncher when you see one. Right, punchers are living different lives than the rest of us. If Tyson showed up and he was physically slower than Jake Paul, and I don't think he is, but if he was physically slower than Jake Paul, it's a mistake to confuse him with Nate Diaz. Right, Tyson would know. He only has to turn over one punch to win the fight. No matter what's happening in the rest of the fight, he only has to land one good left hook, one good uppercut, one good straight right, one good right hook to completely change what has happened. This is one of the dominant punchers, pound for pound, in boxing history. And from what I'm hearing, he's in shape. And he's fighting a man who, quite frankly, isn't going to scare him. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. I like Mike Tyson at a plus 190. Understand a few days ago you could have gotten him at a plus 220. I'm expecting this line to drop. Let me hear from you. Thanks for stopping by.